is going on, everybody? What is going on? It is the beginning of June, halfway through 2021. Oh my goodness. That is crazy.
We made it.
Oh, we made it. Woo-hoo for the woo-hoo. And so we're back with another C3 conversation. And today, y'all, as you may see in the description, we're going to be talking about passive active voice, but not how you think about it. But we're going to put some spins on it because that's what C3 is all about. It's a corporate co-op of consciousness, right? That's what we do. But before we get there, I always like to start off with giving Karen the space to talk about what C3 is and the big why. And then we have some amazing panelists that are coming to rock it out with us on this day. So Karen, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thanks, Lawrence. I think it was about a year ago, actually. I think maybe our first one of these events was July. I'm not sure if it was June or July, but I can tell you it was about a year ago that I was looking for co-creators. We're all out here making these ripples in leadership, leveling up the consciousness and self-awareness and emotional intelligence of leadership. And I just thought, wow, we would get a lot further, a lot faster if we joined together. And there was so much going on in 2020 that really put a fire under my butt in terms of accelerating the pace of conscious change. It was never clearer what was all at stake. And there's certainly more in the future that we don't even know is at stake yet. So I reached out. I just started a LinkedIn outreach campaign. Lawrence was the first one, probably one of the first 3 people I reached out to. And he was the first one to respond and want to jump on the phone and co-create. And we just spoke and we were just in alignment. It was like, great, let's get in action. Let's do this. And I'm so thankful for the partner that Lawrence has been in helping me grow and manage the C3 community, which is full of people who feel the same way. We need to join together. We can't be, just trying to compete with each other and thinking we're going to get further that way. We're just definitely not. So I want to thank our speakers who are here, H.O.T, Lindsey Ackerman, and I want to absolutely give my props to Lawrence. I thank you so much for the partner you've been this year, Lawrence.
That's what it's all about. It's somebody told me it's not competition, it's cooperation. We're all out here trying to do amazing things in this world. And it's only fair that if we believe we have superpowers, we get with other superheroes that have superpowers and we make this world a better place and we show up as us, right? Not trying to be anything more than what we were gifted to be. And so thank you so much, Karen, for extending the offer. And like you said, life has been vibing and we've been having fun while doing it. So to kick off our panel today, just some introductions, who you are and what is it that you really do in this world. And I'm gonna start with Lindsey. What's up, Lindsey?
Hello, good morning. Good morning.
Lindsey is project manager for geotechnical projects at Nicholson Construction. I'll let her explain more about what that means.
Yeah, sure. So I'm in a bit of transition. I'm moving from Washington, where I was full-time on a project out there at Hanford as a project manager. And we're doing I would say on a high level, we do a lot of just the foundation work. It's a lot of days spent in the dirt. It's a lot of fun. I have a really great crew that I really enjoy working with. And I'm moving now to Denver to help support the project a little bit more remotely so I can be in the office a little bit more, settle down a bit. It's been a wild ride. I'm originally from Canada, moved down here about 4 years ago, and it's been a blast. So I'm having fun.
Yeah, and Jay is with us as you see him being mobile and all of that good stuff. But he's out here moving and shaking. Jay is the COO for the Academy of Creative Coaching and also somebody that is a brother from another. But Jay, tell the people a little bit more about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, Lawrence, and thank you guys for having me. I'm J.H.O.T. I'm the COO of the Academy of Creative Coaching. I'm also an author and speaker as well. I am a certified relationship coach and certified mastermind facilitator. And I have a long sales background, right? I have 15 years of sales, of enterprise level sales. So lots of sales experience and sales history. And that's pretty much me. And Lawrence, if you will bear with me for just a couple minutes, I am going to transition. So I'm going to disappear from the screen And just like magic, I'm going to reappear in a couple minutes, and I'll be glad to be a part of the conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
We got you covered.
So Lindsey is the one actually who came in, and we always recommend when you come into C3, you introduce yourself. Tell us what it is that has worked for you that you want to share so that we can all learn and grow from our collective intelligence and wisdom and experience. And Lindsey had said that one thing that she's found lately that has been really successful for her was just switching. It seems like such a simple change, right? But words we know are powerful, and words matter. And she found that when she's communicating, she switches from passive voice to active voice, she gets better results. Lindsey, why don't you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I'll tell you how I first came about it. I got that dreaded "you're too nice" comment. And I thought to myself, Lindsey's being nice an effective leader? No, being nice is not an effective leadership quality. That can be kind, but being nice isn't going to get you the results that you're looking for. So with that in mind, that was the first awareness. That was the first moment that I said, okay, what has worked in the past has got me here, but if I want to be an effective leader, I need to make a couple of changes. And that first easy change is changing your language. And the way I started that was looking at my emails. I looked at some past emails, and yeah, I would say it was a nice email. So I took a writing course a few years ago, so I just tapped back into that. And then looking at that writing course, it was focused on reports and writing skills for your clients and things like that. But there was so much more information that looking back at it now that I'm using today that I thought. So I looked at that active versus passive voice. But looking at that, it's an assertive language. And being assertive in your emails and your verbal language is so important. So looking at the emails first, with that awareness, it was such an easy transition to actually use it verbally and be more effective in those meetings and facilitating meetings, interacting with your client, networking. It was such an easy shift when you have that first awareness. So with that, the results were immediate. I had tasks getting completed on time. You have an increased level of respect when you have that assertive language in your emails and in that conversation. I liked what you said about the power, because having this assertive language and using an active voice, you do step into your power. And as females, we really do fall back to being nice. It is an important quality. It's very important, but we also have to be assertive, and allowing each of us to step into that power that we hold. I think that's wonderful. And it's such a trickle down effect of, yes, the respect, they listen, the tasks are getting done. It was a really great transition.
And you remind me if this is true. You're in a male-dominated field.
Very much.
Yeah. I was thinking about the tool Grammarly. I had an upgraded account for a little while, and then I turned it off because it was constantly spinning as I was typing. It was just,
always thinking.
It's always thinking, right? But that's awareness I thought it was a really great tool for that, because it does tell you when you're using a passive voice versus an active voice. I think about when I was teaching my students how to write cover letters, and just taking out small words like "I think" and "I believe," and just saying like, this is the truth. This is, verified. There's even just saying these results, and then being specific about them, demonstrate that, I'm capable of doing this for you. I'm adding this value for you. And it's not like I think I'll be able to do that for you, right? It seems like such a small difference, but then there's also the where you're coming from when you say it. You're coming from a place of certainty, and you're also giving clarity, because I think when you do I found that when I'm nice, I can be vague. I'm not clear, especially with my kids. Like, they will take a little ounce of flexibility and stretch it to the furthest mile they can take it. You know what I mean? Like, I have to be very clear about my expectations with them, or they will just take my words and use that any room for anything else against me. So I can imagine there's a lot of venues that you can use active versus passive voice. And Lawrence, what about you?
Yeah, no, what was coming up for me is just utilizing it in feedback. And there's something about active versus passive, and I heard it termed like the blur words. You talked about the ambiguity of the message versus, hey, this is what I need to give you, versus it sounds like an option. It sounds like your opinion, but you're like, hey, I told you the other day, where you were like, well, that really didn't sound like pointed feedback to me. That was just like you wanted to share something with me. And then for leaders and people to be aware of, how was that message received? And did I actually use the words that you described, Karen and Lindsey, of you kind of were on it, but then you backed yourself out of it. But you really needed to tell them some very pointed things. And I've seen it come up in that manner of, hey, that passive voice when I know you're busy. Why would you lead with that? Because all you just did is allow them the opportunity, like, yeah, you got it. Yeah, I'm busy. Right? I'm out. Right? Like, and it's like jump ship, like, whoo, that was easy. And there's no ownership and there's no accountability. So yeah, the blur words are a huge thing. And Lindsey, when you think about just the state of the world and how we all navigate this next normal, how big do you believe this effective communication, how big of a role do you believe it'll play?
Yeah, it has to be huge. It has to be huge. We need to progress. We need to move things forward. And if we're, like you said, we're allowing you to back out right away, well, we're not progressing and we're not moving forward. We owe it to the people below us and to the people around us and the people above us. We owe it to them to give them clear and concise information so that they can make the best decision and they can be better. We all want to be good at our jobs. And if we're not allowing them to do that because of our poor communication or our poor leadership, then it trickles down to them, and then they're not an effective employee. So it's so important on so many levels for the progression of where we are going back to our new normal.
Jay, thanks for joining us. Glad you're safely in your office. I appreciate you, being here and on time, even though you weren't safely in your office when you're driving. I'm glad you made it. So I'd love to know, when it comes, Lindsey was talking about results, like things were getting done on time, right? When you are using effective communication, then there's conversion to sales, correct? But there's probably lots of other different results as well. Tell us about your, the general advice you usually give around active voice versus passive voice, and what kind of results you realize with it.
That's interesting. Good question, Karen. So, I think active voice in sales is incredibly important. I think there are subtexts in sales, right? When you're doing effective communication. So, actually, to use the example of the company that I work with now, the Academy of Creative Coaching. So we do a lot of informational conversation, right? So I want to share the information. I want to be as transparent and as open and as honest as I can about what we do and how we do it. And I want to ultimately leave the decision up to the buyer, right? Because I think one of the things in our space is that there are so many companies out there in different price points and different levels that sometimes they come across pushy. They feel salesy, right? And I don't want that feeling with us. Now, that said, so that's kind of a little bit of a passive voice, kind of active, but a little passive in some ways. But with the active voice in enterprise sales, man, that's paramount, right? I need to make sure that I'm communicating clearly, that I'm communicating effectively, that I'm being proactive on not just the features and benefits of what we have to offer, but more importantly, how is it going to change your life? How is it going to make your day better? How is it going to transform your day? And when I was managing and kind of leading salespeople as well, I also felt like it was important for that salesperson to whoever they were working with, didn't matter if it was CFO or didn't matter if it was someone on the ground level, right? Having that day-to-day conversation with customers. How will it affect your boss and your boss's boss? Because if you can have a conversation on how you can affect the lives of the people above you, then you can pitch anything to them, right? Because they trust you, because they know at the end of the day, you're trying to make the business better and you're trying to make their lives better. So that's really how active voice, I think, has worked in the past for me in my sales career.
Can you give us some examples of where somebody would use passive voice, but then you would ask them to alter it to be more active?
Ooh, sure, absolutely. One of the things I think, especially in enterprise sales, that we learn to do is we are closing all the time. And I like to say we're soft closing all the time. So what we're doing is we're checking.
ABC, right? Always be closing.
Always be closing, right? Exactly. So as we're soft closing, from a leadership standpoint, I'm checking in and I'm thinking about, okay, I'm leading the customer where I want them to go, but I want to make sure this is where they want to go. So as a passive salesperson, I may say, hey, does this solution work for you? What does this look like? Is this working for you? What are your thoughts? So those are simple, basic questions, right? But if I'm transitioning that to more of an active voice, I'm thinking, okay, so how does this change exactly what your employees are doing? What are some specific things that you can see or some specific takeaways that will apply to your day-to-day? And what's the measurable part of this, right? SMART goals. What's the measurable part of what we're doing that's going to impact your day-to-day? How is it going to impact vertically your day-to-day? Is there a possibility that it'll impact horizontally? Can we apply this to other teams that are parallel to you? So I can take the same questions that I ask passively that are kind of blasé questions and turn them into something that's more active, that gets the customer's wheels spinning and hopefully affects them in a way that they want to buy from us.
That sounds a lot similar to the branding process, where people can go from awareness that's kind of generally like, I know that I'm successful because these things, but when you ask some really specific questions and then you can get more specific and more specific, it comes down to like, wow, because I take this approach and think this way and communicate this way, then I'm able to, that's when people get really clear about their unique value.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, for sure.
So active and passive, right? It sounds good, briefs well. We all need to be great at it, right? That's basically what we've been talking about for this whole time. But how do we get people to care? Because they've been practicing away for so long.
Mm-hmm.
What's the business impact of not doing it well? Lindsey, then Jay, because you both got some business chops. So
yeah, no, it is very impactful. It, like I said at the beginning, it's small things that, my engineers on site, they're getting their tasks done. So now we don't have a 6-hour delay because we're revisiting something that I emailed them 2 hours ago that I didn't give them a deadline for, or I was a little bit too soft and I used the, hey, when you have time, instead of I need the results provided by da da da. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's a loss of production, and that's directly related to money. So absolutely, very big impacts.
Good business case. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
And Jay, I would imagine too that, besides, because you said your sales are really informationally based, any kind of room for vagueness, because people get frozen in a state of confusion, right? So they just don't act. That's really a huge repercussion of not using active voice, is that people will just choose not to act, right? Lawrence, I wanted to know more about your question. Are you asking, how do we get other leaders to care about using the active voice, or how do we get the people that we're communicating to care that we're using our active voice?
Yes, and.
Okay.
because here's why I say yes, and. Because one of the things that I believe got flushed out over the past year and some change is really how bad in some cases we were at communicating need clearly, concisely, on time in a lot of cases. And so what it looked like is a bunch of awkward people trying to have necessary conversations without offending anybody. But again, it's active versus passive. And is it necessary? Are you communicating something that I need? And more times than not, it's yes. And so if there's a belief you need to share, then I think we should actually be trying to get good at it. Mm-hmm. And so that would insinuate not just leaders but everybody it's a contact sport, right?
Mhm.
The people thing is a contact sport. So yeah, it's a yes and for me.
Got it.
So I would jump in and say, in sales for years, there was probably a decade there from maybe 2000 to 2010 that we sold to people's pain points, right? So selling to pain, there's some value in it because people want to alleviate pain. So it worked, right? There was a way to make it work. But I think selling to change is even better, right? And what I mean by that is, so Lawrence asked the question, why does it matter? So that's really one of the questions that I want to know as a salesperson. Why does what I'm bringing to you matter? So here's the thing. I can't ask that question because often you don't know. Whatever widget I have may really not, it doesn't make, a computer's a computer, doesn't matter. I work for Dell, right? Doesn't matter if it's Dell or HP, as long as it gets me the internet and I can do what I need to do. Why does it really matter? So what I need to find out is what really matters to you. It may have something that has nothing to do with technology at all, possibly, right? So let me find out what really matters to you. Let me help you figure out how to harness that. And if technology fits in that, maybe it's not a computer, maybe it's a printer, maybe it's a server, maybe it's a switch, maybe it's something I don't even sell and I can connect you to someone else. I remember this is a very specific case. When I worked for Staples, I was trying to sell a solution to a company in South Carolina, and our solution didn't win. And I told the customer, I said, hey, I'm glad you picked a solution that you feel like works for you. I am still your consultant. Whatever you need help on, I actually worked on that product at another company. So however I can help you, right? So that's kind of a different way of saying whatever matters to you, let me know. So that customer came back, he had issues. I was able to help him. The long and the short of it is when their contract ran out, because I helped him more than his provider helped him, guess what? They came back and bought from us. And I didn't sell anything. I just tried to find out what matters and how can I help him. So that was, why does it matter? Because it matters to you.
I like that. I'm thinking about all the teachers that I've had over the years, marketing gurus that I've learned under, and on everything they taught me about selling to the pain, and that you're right. It has its realm of effectiveness, but also feels kind of icky. It feels a little bit like fear mongering.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it sets up me and my prospective or future client for what they really need is to not necessarily be driven by what they're afraid of, but toward what's possible and probable when they engage me, right? Huge difference in just the whole relationship when you approach it more towards what's probable and not, when you're able to use the best practices or the tools and the coaching and all that. I want to just make sure that everybody knows that you're welcome to engage in this conversation. I know we had some problems on LinkedIn. Lawrence is sending out a YouTube link so that you can catch us there if LinkedIn is giving you problems, so we can go live there. So go ahead and throw us a question, throw Jay a question, throw Lindsey a question. Tell us about your experience with active versus passive voice. Please let us know you're here. Even just let us know you're watching. We appreciate you.
Say hey. Yeah, so I'm thinking of it, and I see Lindsey's wheels turning, like she's spinning, like I'd see them going. And when you think about, let's say, because we, us leaders, we like to project, forecast, if you will, the state of business, and asking, particularly active or passive voice, and the question, what message are you sending? When you think about attributes of this 21st century, 22nd century, or whatever century we're in, what are leaders going to need to be successful?
Mm-hmm. For me, initially, it's communication, whatever form of communication, that is what we need. We have moved into a remote working environment where most people I know split a portion of their time at home or at the office. Or for myself, my projects are halfway across the country. I'm working remotely. And the only way that we can provide them success is through that communication. So it just fundamentally, that clear, concise form of communication, whether it's verbal, through Zoom meetings, through emails, carrier pigeons, I don't care what it is. We need to have that clear and concise information being transmitted. I wanted to go back to something that Karen said, and it was just looking at how we present it and how it empowers people or it disempowers them. And I think having that empowerment that we can provide to them is so important, because you were saying sometimes that form of communication is just, it feels icky, and it does, you know? So let's get that empowering language to them. Let's empower them that they can make the best decision, that they feel supported. It's all encompassing.
Even physiologically or neurologically, you know, when you're working with somebody and you might inspire them to decide to change with the fear basis, but keeping them moving forward, your brain needs to, we know this now because of neuroscience. We know that having a positive outcome and believing a positive outcome is possible is integral to being able to stay motivated towards anything, you know, and the state of fear and what your brain does in a state of fear is the complete opposite of what you want and need to move forward toward any goal. So it just makes a lot of sense to talk more about the future and the possibilities and the change, you know, that you want. It makes so much sense.
No, you're right. Going back to the fear, because using that passive language and not being clear, it triggers that person for that uncertainty and that lack of confidence. And that's directly related to a fear response. If you have that uncertainty in that person or that action, you immediately go into that fear response. And we just go back into a full negative circle again.
And defensive,ness even, you know, like, oh, well, that's not what I got from your message. You know, what I got from your message was this. And then you're communicating about your communication.
Instead of getting it done.
But what to me, what I heard there, particularly it's the self-talk too, that most people, we're doing this. Hey, how are you hearing me? But when you do it to yourself, how damaging is that? Because think about this. If you're talking about Lindsey and Jay and Karen, you brought up already, like as a business attribute, you're now telling me, and again, once everybody learned about being an extrovert or introvert, I feel like that was everybody's like opportunity to either engage or not, be obnoxious or not. But now that we're saying effective, clear, concise, we define all of that for me, because that seems like three separate things. If I'm that leader who I can't effectively do it, but then now, oh, you want me to lead people and I got to talk to them? Well, daggone. And then now, oh, shoot. I now have to build my own self-esteem, and I got to deal with my own gremlins while I try to process all this stuff. And and I tell you, for the novice, they're like, golly, let me ring the bell on this thing. Like, is it even worth it to be in leadership anymore? And I've had several conversations with people. They're just like, I just go back to being an individual contributor. Like, I'm over it. And I believe what we all experienced is and I think what we've all been saying is, in communication, there's a bit of care, and there's a bit of, hey, let's collaborate in this, and that the expectation isn't for you to have it all, but at least communicate where you are, and then we can meet you there. And I believe that level of vulnerability being communicated is new for people. Mm-hmm. And we talk about conscious leadership, like to say, Lindsey, I think you want me to be better, but I'm having a real hard time. And now I have to get through the gremlin of how is she going to view me now that I've just been that vulnerable? All right. So and I think vulnerability, and Karen, I don't know how we always end up here. How is that? And that is safety as well. How do we build up that muscle as we get skilled in this art of active versus passive communication?
That's a huge question.
What I would say is, just as I made this transition in my email space, I'm just going to go to email space because it's really easy. But as I made that transition and I'd read over my paragraphs and change sentences around or use different vocabulary, I felt like a badass, you know? Totally increases your self-confidence when you read it back to yourself and you're like, yeah, I'm going to get that done. You know, it feels so good.
So I wanted to jump in, and Lawrence, I'll come back to the vulnerability piece. But when you asked a moment ago, I actually made a note, right? What will leaders need going forward? This is kind of a different take on the active voice and passive voice. But what I need as a leader is I need people that are free thinkers, right? And that they bring something to the table and they are adding value to the company. They're putting information out to the company, and come from all these amazing backgrounds, and they add information that the person in the hot seat, which is someone who's trying to overcome a challenge or achieve a goal, they add something that this person never would have thought of. So if I have people that are active, that are in my business, look at excited in my business, oh my gosh, that's the change that I'm looking for and that I hope to have going forward for the next 10 or 20 years. And just briefly on the idea of building up the vulnerability to have the conversation, to say, okay, am I an effective leader, or am I being clear, or what does concise look like? I think that's just part of the new narrative moving forward, right? You see it in startups. You see leaders that are sitting down having, thought bubbles and having these conversations and masterminds where they're being vulnerable with their employees and saying, look, I don't have all the answers. I need somebody to jump in. And that kind of goes back to my other thing, right? Where you have people that are offering other ideas. So I think vulnerability is a real thing. And I think in business, it's a real thing, not just in our personal lives. And as leaders, when we're vulnerable, people are more open to relating and trusting us and realizing, hey, that guy doesn't just have it all together, or he's on a different level. He's in a different socioeconomic status or whatever. He's got problems and issues and all those things just like I do. And we can relate to one another. So that's kind of my thought on that.
When you said the word gremlins, I instantly had a flashback, because 16 years ago, I worked with my very first coach, and it was a coach that was hired by my firm. And that's what she was the first one to help me raise my self-awareness about self-talk. And she called them gremlins. And we did this, exercise where I blew up a balloon and I drew a face on it. It was a gremlin, and then I popped it. And I was like, I'm the boss gremlin, but there were so many things about that coaching experience, one that led me here today. First of all, certainly totally responsible for, I just celebrated 15 years in business yesterday, or Tuesday. Thank you. But it was the first time that I had somebody in a professional realm that I could be vulnerable with. Because I was constantly on guard. I was a young professional. I was very self-conscious. I was a high performer, but I was still very like, am I doing this right? I would just wanted that positive feedback. And I had good leaders. I had good bosses. But to be able to actually, and she called herself the Velvet Hammer. That's how she introduced herself. That was her, her tagline, the Velvet Hammer. So what she explained to me the very first time that we talked was that she was going to be direct. And she was going to do it and out of love. She was going to do it out of love. It was because, we were going to form a relationship, and I'm going to be her safe space where I can really share with her what I'm really feeling and what my fears are, and, what's actually stopping me, and things that are going on in my life that are impacting my job. And the fact that she wasn't just working with me, but she was working with my bosses. Made me feel like, so I'm not the only one here who's having these self-doubts. Everybody has them, right? That was a huge revelation to me. Oh, they have a name. The self-talk is called that's a gremlin, like mind blown, right? And it all starts with self-awareness, as we keep saying. And now I'm learning more, because the neuroscience that I study is telling me, if you are having problems forming a good habit, evaluate your self-talk. I just wrote a blog about this, because if you're bullying yourself in your head and putting yourself down in your head, are you really going to listen to yourself? Your subconscious, it likes to be directed. It likes that clarity. It likes to have, it's like, we are the troops. conscious mind is the captain, right? I mean, you want the captain to be clear with your subconscious and be positive and be supportive and affirming, like, so what a huge game changer, just, being aware of the self-talk and the shifts that you can change in your whole life just by noticing that. I'm so glad the conversation went to self-talk. Thanks for doing that, Lawrence.
I was just filling out the room and what I was hearing. No, but it's crazy because it's all in the filters, right? And again, the opportunity for all of us in active versus passive voice, the symbolism of what is active, right? What is passive, right? And then finding that assertive tone, right? Because again, somebody's active, maybe you're always on, but is that what the moment needs?
Mm-hmm.
And then as you talk about, that negative self-talk, what's the reframe? And I love coaching. You talk about your coach as a gift, just the ability to learn what is reframing as it pertains to messaging. And I love that y'all brought up the startup or that CEO in that early, like, it's just us four as a core leadership group. And if we're not brutally honest with each other, and I use brutal and some people cringed, but as a startup, like, look, we got a lot riding on this. Like, all of us quit our jobs to be here together. And if you're holding out, Jay, like, dude, you're putting all of us at the mercy of your selfishness. And so we all got to come to the table. And I think that ownership of, hey, what do I own here? What am I going to be responsible for? And then I have this core group of people that I said yes to, whether it's I'm an employee or I'm an entrepreneur. I said yes. And so now, what did I say? What did I say I would be accountable for? Right. And I believe that active and passive voice, like, what story are you making true? And I believe it starts there. And then the filters you use is when you hear others and they give you information back. And I love Lindsey's email example, right? You've read your email back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it hit, because you're like, yeah, that's what I want to get across, was like, yeah, that right there. And could you say that 6 months ago? And why? Why couldn't you? Because you changed something. And so when you think about a first step for people, Lindsey, I want you to go, and then Jay, I want you to go. If somebody is gonna, because again, it's always about that first next step to get there. What do you advise people to do or coach people to do?
Yeah, the first step has to be the email, because you're safe in your office. You have time. You can get on the thesaurus, whatever it is, but you're safe to practice it here and you're safe to do it here. And it's hard. It's hard speaking in front of people. It's very hard. And I catch myself the most falling back to that language in conversation. So being able to sit in front of my computer, take the time, reread it, but come up with options. When you cut something out, you have to replace it with something. So write down a list of ideas that, hey, I'm cutting out the word just. What am I going to replace it with? Or how am I going to reframe my sentences? I'm going to eliminate any should, would, could. Replace it. I have a list of email like a boss, it says, and I've got a list of things that maybe I don't use them, but again, it's that awareness of, hey, let's shift this. Let's email like a boss. Let's shift it. So absolutely emails.
Is that something you are able to, with copyrights, to share with our community?
Yeah, I got it from Google Images quite a while ago, so I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I'll maybe send a clip of it, but it just has, I'll just take a second.
Okay.
So it just says, for example, email like a boss. Okay, so instead of what works best for you, say, can you do this time or this time? Instead of no worries or no problem, say, always happy to help. I think we should maybe, instead, it'd be best if we. So just simple things like that are so important and make a very big impact.
I think what Lindsey said is great and it's powerful, right? Because everything that she said, what it does, it totally reframes the characterization of the relationship, right? So what you've done now is, instead of being really vague, no worries, or let's talk soon, or what have you, now we have put more structure around it. So So let's see. So what time will we meet on Wednesday, 9 a.m. or 10 a.m.? Right? So now we've set up this, we've made an active step in how we move forward, right? I love what Lindsey said, but I've got to say something different, right? Or that would be of no value. So my thought actually goes back to the self-talk. So I think with the self-talk, when you change how you feel about yourself, you change, your communication naturally starts to change, right? So I think it's important, whether you're in a sales organization, whether you're in leadership, even if you are an individual contributor and you're on the front line. I think when you have conversations with yourself to say, okay, today is my day, we're going to get things done. I have a goal, or I have a list that I'm trying to achieve, or whatever that looks like. We're going to knock it out. We're going to take care of it. It is already done. And if we fall short, we didn't fall short. We're just going to continue to work to completion, right? So now I'm taking control of the narrative in my mind. So here's a really simple, short example. I remember this like it was yesterday. When I was working at Dell, they wanted us to sell financing on computers, right? And so everybody has their own perspective. I thought the financing was too high. My moral authority got involved in it. So I'm a little sideways about it, right? To use some slang. So my manager comes to me and says, so you're not selling, you're the highest closer on the team, but you're not selling finance. And I'm like, it's too high. I feel like y'all are taking advantage of people if we want to just be real about it. He said, so these people make their own decisions. They're either going to buy it from Dell, they're going to buy it from HP, they're going to buy it from somewhere, but they're going to buy it from us. So here's what we're going to do with you. You are now the leader of financing on our team. And your goal is to make our team the #1 team in finance. I'm like, what? Me? The guy who doesn't believe in it, doesn't like it? He's like, no, you're going to control it. You're going to take control of it, and it is yours. And he walked away. I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, what just happened? What twilight zone am I in? But I had to do it. My manager said, you've got to do it. So I went home. I started to research financing a little bit. How can we frame the narrative like you talked about, Lawrence? And we started to frame the narrative, and I had to try it for myself, right? So I had to become one of the better people in finance. And we wound up being the second highest team in our district in finance. And I was like 3 or 4 or whatever. But the whole thing, the whole reason behind that is I simply changed how I thought about myself, what I was capable of. Now I transferred that into the conversation that I had with the customer. It wasn't about a script or any of that. It was simply changing how I think about myself and reframing the narrative for myself. So that would be my 2 cents.
Boom, man. That's like, we got 2 gangsters on this live today. I love that, Jay and Lindsey, particularly from, it's practical, right? And both of what you said, it's a matter of perspective, right? It's a matter of what the word does to the hearer, right? Even self, right? What did the words do to me, right? Jay had told himself, you don't like it, it's too high, so you made it true. Didn't even engage with it. And before we like email like a boss, it's like, how often did you use that language? And then why was it useful to change? What changed in your mind that said, you know what, I need to wrap my mind around this? And then me and Karen are always talking about leaders who take the conscious road of understanding the why behind it, because I believe there's a level of purposeful communication that happens when you explain it to others, right? Vulnerability and courage, not as differences of each other, but I believe they're synonyms. Right. And again, somebody I love as an author, and I'm so glad I found Brene Brown. Shout out to Brene Brown. Anybody know her, tell her to come to the C3 community. But just vulnerability and courage. And again, I think about myself in all the stages of entrepreneurship, as an internal employee, as an officer in the United States Army, like all of those things took both. They're synonyms. And the moment we wrap our minds around, like, synonyms, vulnerability and courage, like, yeah, we stop making them bad words. It's a matter of perspective. Just because something is different doesn't make it wrong. And so now it's challenging the messages, and then, hey, what's true for me? And then going from there. So Karen, what do you, man, Kit, you close us out with something profound.
Oh
I
gosh.
know you got it.
No pressure or anything. Well, I do want to point out Philip is here, and he's saying something that I noticed you do all the time, Lawrence, which is using and instead of but. And that's something that I learned in Landmark back in 2008, and that was a game changer too. Just it's more empowering to say and. Yes, Philip, we do. Wow, what to say now? I had all this prepared, and then you threw it at me like, let's end with a bang. I think what I want to mostly get across is that there's so much nurturing that I love that we're doing here in the C3 community, where we're creating a safe space where we can say, these were the things that I was doing before that I realized I could have done better. And I love that people like Lindsey and Jay are willing to come and share with us their anecdotal experience, the things that they've invested time in learning and sharing with our community. I wish everybody could come to every event every month, because I am blown away all the time by the things that we get to talk about here. I'm really excited about the year ahead and the telesummit that we plan on doing in the C3 community. And I think I'm using passive voice right now, even as I'm talking, because I'm thinking through it. And I'm like, I'm feeling a little bit under the pressure. I'm going to throw it back to you, Lawrence, because it's 1:48. It's not 1:52 yet.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take 4 minutes, and I'm going to think about how to say it in the safety of my silence.
I love it.
Go ahead, Lindsey. Pop in? I'll just pop in real quick. So something that I do want to say is, on this whole conversation, we're all a work in progress. Karen and I talked about this earlier in the week, that we're all a work in progress. Myself and Jay and Lawrence and Karen, we're all being on this panel is just practice. It's all just practice, and having these situations and learning and being aware of it is so important. And that's what's going to push us forward to the next. So yeah, being a work in progress is okay, and just make changes and let's do better. It's great.
I love it. Yeah, it's like you're on coaching calls with me, Lindsey. I always tell people, I said, it's all about the reps. It's all about the reps. It's the practice of it all. And every opportunity you get, see it just as that. It's an opportunity. It's progress, not perfection, right? Perfection is the myth, right? And we just need to make sure, are we showing up? Are we showing up to do the work? And I really believe that's what the C3 community, and I heard Karen's heart back last summer, and as we were linking up, it was like, hey, I'm all about just meeting up with people with zero egos. Yep, we're going to bring our egos to the party, but hey, we're going to do it in a way that actually honors each other, right? Nobody's going to be, I'm better than you, or wrote a book or two, and now I got some insights. No, you just have the ability to pontificate a little bit better. That's all that is. And so, and I love just our conversations as it pertains to active and passive voice, just as collaborators in this journey. And Karen be like, hey, what's your bandwidth, guy? Like, there's no mincing of words there. Like, really, what's your bandwidth? And so when we think about active and passive, it's really like, hey, the reason why you need to be active in the way you address people is, hey, there are ripples to people's level of understanding. Like, so do you believe that you have some space for us over the next couple months? And I'm like, of course, yeah. But no, really what you asked, do you have the bandwidth now? Like, that's really what you want to know. But like, now you just led me along to like, yeah, over the next couple months, yeah, sure, I can make some space. But all of us need to get clear around those messages. And I love Lindsey, works of progress, not perfection. That's all of us. We're trying to be progressive in what we do and how we do. So I love it. Jay, any closing words from you?
Sure, I'll drop something here as well. This is amazing conversation, by the way. I love it. This is so good. One thing that just jumped out as you were speaking then, Lawrence, was, so look at, think about this, right? So look at your landscape whatever it is you're trying to achieve, right? If you're a sales maker, if you're an executive, if you're a leader, whatever it is, if you want to be a speaker, right? Look at whatever your landscape is. Look at what your competition is doing and look at a gap, right? Look at whatever the gap is. So if the gap is having an active voice and you might be able to do something different than someone else and have an active voice, be active. If the gap is having a passive voice and you can use that passive voice in a powerful way, be passive, right? So, I feel like, at our company, we use the passive voice in a powerful way because when we have these conversations with folks that come to us, they often say the same thing. Oh my gosh, the last person I talked to was trying to pitch me on this and pitch me on that, and they didn't explain anything. I don't understand anything they do. But I come to your website, we understand everything you say, we understand everything on your site. Then I talk to you and you make it even clearer, right? So that's the gap. So just look at what that gap is and then kind of walk in alignment with that gap. And then I would just finish it up with take that first step. If you're a super introvert and you've got to be active, step out and say, hey, how you doing? My name is Jay. Let's have a conversation, right? Just take that first step. Nobody's going to beat you up. You'll be fine. And jump out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love it.
All right, Karen. So I believe this was a good one. And again, y'all don't blame it on our panelists this time. Don't blame it on us that somehow it made it back to self-awareness and it made it back to self-talk and all those good things. But
vulnerability, Brene Brown.
Look, it I don't know how and why, but it keeps coming back around to all that stuff, no matter the topic. We might just say crayons for next time and see what happens. But we thank y'all so much for leaning in to these conversations as panelists. And there will come a time, I'm putting it out there, Karen, there will be a time where we're going to have sponsors. And everybody will be able to benefit immensely from us being able to have a wider broadcast as we have these conversations. I believe they're so necessary. And so we never want to hoard you as contacts. So Jay, Lindsey, how can people connect with you? And then Karen, I'll let you close out with how people connect with C3 further.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, for myself, just find me up on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to answer any sort of messages out there. My number or my name is just on below there, spelt that way, and I'd be happy to talk.
Same thing here, right? So I'm on LinkedIn as well. Just hit me up on LinkedIn. Love to have a conversation. If there's any way I can support, and I can literally do that for you, I'm happy to help. So looking forward to connecting.
What's your book, Jay? Where do we find it?
My book? Where do we find my book? We don't find it yet because I'm building it into a platform. So we're going to keep it quiet for now, I guess.
Okay.
We got a platform coming. Look for that on LinkedIn soon.
All right. Little tease. I like it. Future things coming. Got it. Cool. Lindsey and Jay, and of course, Lawrence, thank you guys so much for sharing this time with me today. I am looking forward to, we have so many topics still to cover, so many runner-up topics, so many things that I'm like cheering for when the poll comes out, like, oh, I can't wait to talk about that. This was another gem. And I thank Lindsey for sharing this as a topic. Obviously, it was of great interest. I hope everybody that voted for this topic gets a chance to see the replay. If you weren't here live, the only place we share the replay is in the C3 community, although we did live stream through YouTube this time because of LinkedIn problems. So I'm assuming there'll be a place to share that on YouTube. But we still prefer when you come into the C3 community, because the purpose of the C3 community is to co-create, to get in touch with, I don't even want to call it networking, because networking doesn't necessarily always imply that there's an action and a creation around that. But that's really what we want, is we want to be able to share Jay's platform, Jay's program. We want to be able to share things like Email Like a Boss. We want to be able to create something that's going to level up consciousness at an accelerated pace, so that we can have more leaders in more companies and more realms around the world where conscious decisions are being made for a more conscious world. So next month should be our 1-year anniversary. I don't know what we have planned for that yet, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Thank you all
Definitely.
for being here.
Thank y'all. Have a great one and be safe.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.